All right, today we're going to dive into a pretty powerful idea about how to break bad habits. And here's a spoiler. It's not about willpower, it's about replacement. So if you've ever felt like you're just stuck in a loop, quitting and then relapsing, this framework could seriously change everything for you. You know the feeling, right? We all make that promise to ourselves. That's it, no more junk food, or I'm done with endlessly scrolling on my phone. We try to power through with sheer willpower, but then a week later, maybe two if we're lucky, we're right back where we started. So why? Why does that approach almost never, ever work? And this is where the big idea comes in, and it completely reframes the whole problem. It's this idea that we're not fighting a battle of subtraction, but one of replacement. You don't just get rid of a habit, you have to build something better in its place. So to really get why this replacement idea is so crucial, we've first got to understand what a bad habit really is. And the truth is, it's never just one simple action. It's a whole ecosystem, an entire world that's built up around it. A really clear example of this is something like alcoholism. The habit isn't just the act of drinking, is it? No way. It's the friends you call up, the bars you go to. It's how you socialize. It's how you deal with stress after a long day or how you celebrate a win. I mean, it's literally woven into the fabric of your life. So you can see the problem now. If you just try to rip the drinking out of that picture, you're left with this huge, gaping hole. Your social life, your coping mechanisms, your daily routines, they all just disappear. And it's that empty space, that vacuum, that pulls you right back into the old habit every single time. You don't just need to replace the habit, you need to replace that entire life. Okay, so we get it. We have to build something new. But what does that even look like? Where do you start? Well, the answer is in making a very conscious choice every single day between two competing futures. Think about it like this. You've got one path, which is your future by default. This is what happens if you just do nothing. You let your impulses and your bad habits steer the ship, and you end up just being a 5-year-older, more stuck version of yourself. But then there's the other path, a future by design. And this is where you consciously, actively decide who you want to become and what you're aiming for. And this is where the psychology gets really interesting. The whole engine that drives this change is anchored by two powerful forces. To really get yourself moving, you need two things: a vision of heaven that pulls you forward, and a vision of hell that you are absolutely desperate to escape. You need both. And we're actually going to start with the uncomfortable part first, but believe me, it's incredibly powerful. We have to define the future you absolutely must avoid. This is about being brutally honest and articulating your own personal hell. So here's a really tough question you have to ask yourself. If you just let go of the wheel, if you let your worst impulses run the show for the next 3 to 5 years, where would you end up? It's so important to face that possibility, to look it right in the eye. And to really make this concrete, the source material gives this absolutely visceral example. Just imagine becoming that 35-year-old creep. The person who just never grew up, who's still stuck in these juvenile patterns with the mind of a 16-year-old, whose habits have just spiraled into something darker, more isolating, watching things online that get more and more brutal just to feel anything at all. And here's the punchline. If you don't change course, that is your destiny. The whole point of this exercise is to make it specific, to make it real, and to make it deeply uncomfortable. Look, that's supposed to feel awful. That discomfort, that fear, that's the whole point. You want to harness that feeling. You want that vision of hell right behind you, pushing you forward, giving you a really powerful reason to run as fast as you can in the other direction. It is fuel. But, of course, you can't just be running away from something forever. That's exhausting. You need a destination. You need something to run towards. So now let's talk about the second, more hopeful part of the engine, building that positive vision that gives you direction and purpose. So how do you actually build this thing? Well, it's not just about daydreaming. There's a structure to it. You want to sit down and really think in detail about all these different areas. What do your ideal relationships look like? Who are your friends? What about your family life? What career are you aiming for? How are you going to take care of yourself, mentally and physically? And what are you doing for your community? Be specific. Write it down. And this is really important. This isn't just some fluffy, wishful thinking exercise. The source material frames this as making a covenant, a serious promise with yourself. The very act of specifying where you're going makes it so much more likely you'll actually get there. You're basically drawing a map to your own better future. Okay, so we've got the psychology down, right? A hell pushing you, a heaven pulling you. But what's actually happening in your brain? Why does this framework work so well? Well, let's take a quick look at the neuroscience. It all comes down to this one little molecule, dopamine. And most of us have heard of it, right? We call it the pleasure chemical, but that's not really the whole story. Turns out, dopamine is actually released in anticipation of a reward, when you're moving towards a goal that you value. It's the molecule of motivation. And here it is, the key to the whole thing. This process works because you're essentially giving your brain a new, much better game to play. You're replacing the cheap, artificial dopamine hit you get from a bad habit with the deep, meaningful, earned reward that comes from taking steps toward a future you genuinely want to build. So in the end, it really just comes down to one thing. You have a future ahead of you. That's a fact. The question is, are you going to be its author, or are you going to be its victim? The choice is yours.